Hi, my name is Emily Borso. The thing that I wanted to talk about was universal design for learning and the major takeaways and what we learned about in class and through our readings. The first key concept that I really took away from was UDL being analogous to GPS. This was the article by Rose and Gravel, 2010. I thought it was beneficial to me because I'm in SPED 326 right now, and I've talked about UDL and have, the basic understanding of it. But as far as how to actually use it in the classroom, I wasn't quite sure about. And so using this analogy really cemented for me how to use it as a teacher. Some of the supporting details, well, first of all, that GPS functions, in a way that we can relate to students. So we determine where they're at. Academically, socially, whatever their needs are. And so that's their present location. And so then we have to set the destination. So on the GPS, we set in where we're going. And with students, we have to figure out as teachers, what do we want them to know by the end of this lesson, or by the end of the day, by the end of the month, the unit, the year. The last one is that we need to select the individual route. So when we're using a GPS, we obviously can figure out, okay, do we want to take the highway? Do we want to avoid the highway? Do we want to stay under a certain speed limit? There's all these different ways that we can get to where we want to go. The same with students. Their needs, if they have a disability, if they have trouble, learning a certain type of way, if they're very visual, if they like working in groups and that's how they learn and benefit, we have to take all this into account. And based on that, we can select which way is going to get them to our destination. All the principles of UDL are really supported by GPS. So the first principle is multiple means of representation. At least to me, multiple means of representation didn't really make a lot of sense, but when I can look at it in terms of GPS, it clicks, I get it. So for the GPS, you can have options for sound and for the brightness. You can control the language that the person is speaking, even their accents, or if you want a male or female voice. You can use symbols, different comprehension options, so they can just highlight the very important features. They can show landmarks versus big picture. So there's all these different ways that the route can be represented to you. When you're driving, you will prefer one way because it's easier for you to understand. And so it just makes so much sense as far as UDL that that's what we have to do. With students, we have to figure out what is going to be the best way for them to see this material, and we have to, go ahead and do that. The second principle of UDL is multiple means of action and expression. So for this in the GPS, we can speak into the machine, or we can, type the first few letters and then the city destination will appear. We can simulate the trip ahead and as a big picture, or we can do it in small little steps if we get overwhelmed. And it also gives us immediate feedback, and not harshly, but in a positive way, which is something that Daniel Pollitt talked about when he came to our class. They need to have options as far as, how are they going to actually do this work? How are they going to express themselves or act? Maybe they need to receive help when they write essays or sentences. Maybe they need a Dynavox to help them. It's something that we have to consider as teachers, that students learn different ways and express and act different ways, and some of those are more beneficial. And on the multiple means of engagement, so for a GPS system, you have options for self-regulation, for sustaining effort and persistence, and also just different choices to recruit your interest when you're selecting a GPS product. And so we have to, kind of be our advertisers for students and, get them to engage in the material, make it exciting for them based on their needs. And that's going to change from one student to the other, from one school to the other. So difficult to do, certainly, especially as an English teacher. So not a lot of people are wanting to read Catch-22, but we have to somehow make it apply to their lives and make it interesting to this whole variety of students. So we have to provide different ways for them to engage in the material. The second key concept, UDL, is that UDL anticipates the support that students need at all levels. In planning, Teachers have to have clear goals for the students. They have to have flexible methods and materials for the variety of learners. Often they can work with a special education teacher in the planning, and they should, especially if they're students with disabilities, to learn different ways to apply UDL principles into their teaching, into their instruction and assessment. And so the planning is a very important time to consider all of this and to really take the GPS model, look at it, and figure out, okay, what do I need to do as a teacher? And the second is through instruction. Teachers need to figure out how to best represent the material, show it to the students, everything pretty much that we just talked about. But at the instructional level, it's important. And of course, at the assessment level, teachers need to figure out what an individual student needs in order to have the best results. So maybe they need somebody to be with them as they take their tests. Maybe they cannot do an essay test. Maybe they have to do an essay test for whatever reason. Maybe just as far as UDL goes, just having different options during assessment. So instead of always having sit-down tests, like you can assess them by observing and making notes or having charts of your students. And I think it's really important because it goes with, the multiple means of action and expression to have students in all of their variety, no matter their skill level or if they have a disability or not, but having these different ways to assess them at all levels, and you have to support them at all levels based on their